Okay, so we've got one test in our framework, so let's continue by adding a second test. Now, if I wanted to add another test, I could just add it to the same feature file, so I could put it here if I wanted to. But just to demonstrate some extra bits and pieces, I'm going to create a new feature file and put our test in that one. So let's go to features, new, and we'll call the next feature file text.feature. Okay, and let me just show you what we're going to test next. So we've got a text field here, and we're going to just test that we can enter text into the text field and that the text is in the text field once we've entered it. Pretty simple, but it will demonstrate a few things. Right, so we'll call our feature file text. And what we're going to do this time around is, rather than just do a scenario, we're going to do something called a scenario outline. And we'll call the test text box text field can be populated. And we'll put given I am on the test. So we've already got the step definition from the last test we did, so we can reuse that, which is cool, saves us rewriting it. And we'll put when I enter some text into the text field, then the text field is populated. And the thing that this does, it's a little bit extra on top of the regular scenario, is you use an examples table. So below here, I've just basically put text, so that each time that you run, every time you run this test, it won't just run once, it will run for every row that you have in this table that you put down here. And every time it runs, it can utilize the values that you put in these rows. So if I put in here, for example, hello, and then I put another row, and I put, I don't know, blah, what will happen here is this test will run once for hello and once for blah. And we can actually utilize these and pass these values here into our steps. So if I rewrite this slightly, I enter some text into the text field, I enter, and let's put I enter, the syntax is just speech quotes and some angular brackets. If I put text, which is what I've called this value here, it will pass in these values. So let's do the same here. So the text field is populated with text. Cool. So now if we run this, we can do exactly the same as we did beforehand. We'll run it once in order to get it to generate our code for our step definitions. There we go. Same again. So we'll go to step definitions, file, new file, and we'll call it text underscore steps.rb. And let's just put our new step definitions in here. And you'll notice that it's slightly different in the fact that here it's got the string value, which is what we're passing in from our examples table. So let's call that something a bit more useful so it's more readable, and we'll just call that text. And same here, we'll call this one text. And just to show you how it works, I'm going to put puts and then text, which is it's going to grab from here, and do the same with the one below. And let's go back to our text file here, text test, and run this. And what's going to happen now is it's going to run this scenario once. It's going to grab this value here, and it's going to pass it into our step here, and it's going to output it here. So that's our little sequence of events. So hopefully what we should see is it should say hello when it runs that one, hello when it runs that one, and then it will start again, run exactly the same test again, and it'll put blah twice when it runs those 2 steps. So let's run that and see what it does. So yeah, it's running it the first time. Oh, it's running it the second time very quickly there, and you can see it's just output that text. It's run the code within that step definition here. So let's make it do something slightly more useful, and we'll get this step here to populate that text field. So let's just inspect the element, and it's got an ID of text field 1, so we'll use that to populate it. So what we want to do now, and you'll start to see where we can do some refactoring to improve this. If we go to driver dot find element, and we're going to find the element by ID, and the ID is, oops, not that. Let me just copy that again. Text field 1, and we want to send keys, and we're going to basically send it whatever that text value is set to. And here's where you're going to see an issue that we can fix and improve our code at the same time. So this driver variable that we're setting over here in our hello steps, all of these steps can see this variable and they've all got access to it. This file cannot see that. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the driver somewhere a little bit more visible so that we can see it from all our step definitions. So that what we do here is we're going to create a folder, and we're going to call that folder support. And within that folder, this is the normal kind of standard way of doing this. We're going to create a file called hooks.rb. And in that file, we are going to have 2 methods. One which is called before. There we go. So before scenario. And we get another bit of code here which is called after, and I'll just explain what we've done here. So we've written a method here called before, another one called after, and what happens is before any scenario runs, it's going to run this bit of code, and then obviously after it's run any scenario, it's going to run this piece of code. So if I show you how that works, if I put I am run before the scenario, and I am run after the scenario. So if we run our previous test that we know works, so we run this one here. You can see there it said I'm run before, so it's run that piece of code, then it's run our scenario, and then it's run that other piece of code that runs afterwards. So what we want to do is we go to here, so we're going to take this line of code here that sets our driver, and we're going to go to our hooks, and we'll just, there we go. We will do that here. So the first thing it will do before it runs any scenario, so that we don't have to keep doing it every single time, it will just open up the browser and assign it to that driver. Another quick thing that we need to do as well is, because it still won't have access to it, we're going to put an @ in front of it, and what that does is it turns this from being a local variable into something called an instance variable. If you want to learn more about that, you can Google variable scope. There's different ways you can set variables up in which they're visible to different parts of the code. So we've called that. So we've now got a driver which set up beforehand with the browser assigned to it. Let's go back to our steps again. So we're now going to have to change this to be, use the instance driver. So we just put an @ sign in front of driver where it's, and there we go, there's another one there. Now if we just check that's still running the previous test. Cool, that worked. So next, let's go back to our text feature. And let's change that to, so we want to, that's fine. Cool, let's check that that's entering the text. We'll just put a quick sleep here so we can check that everything's working okay. So what should happen now, it should just go to the test page, enter the value, hello, sleep for a few seconds, and then it will close the browser, start again, and it will run the same test again, but as blah. So I think we've just, there we go, we'll just run that again. Hello, wait for a few seconds. Blah, cool. You'll also notice it seems to have opened up two browsers there, so it's not closing the browser after every iteration. So what we can also do to fix that is we go back to our hooks. We can actually go driver.quit, and that'll actually close down the browser for us every time. Right, next we want to just validate that we've got that text entered into that text. So we're going to do exactly the same as we did last time and just do another assertion here. So we'll use expect once again. And we want to expect, we want to basically get the value of this. So let's go grab that. And we want to get the attribute for the value. So we change that to attribute. So what this does is you've got your element here, and then by putting .attribute on the end here, you can then access the different attributes that element might have. So in this case, value, which is the text that's populating that text box. So we would expect the text value of the text field to equal the text that we're passing in. So let's do that. So .to equal, and we want it to equal that text. Let's try running that. There we go, it's entered hello. Let's quit the browser this time. And it's entered blah. It's checking that that is now equal to blah. And everything's cool. 2 scenarios run, 2 scenarios pass, 6 steps. And we can probably make that a little bit quicker by getting rid of that sleep that we don't need anymore. And we can go just one step further after this. And we can actually get, so that we don't have to keep putting this require Selenium WebDriver here, we can actually go to our support folder here, and we'll create a file called env.rb, which is our environment file, and we can actually just list our requirements in here, so that again this will run before everything else, and it just means that we don't have to keep requiring this at the at any points where we're reassigning the browser to a variable. Cool, so there you have it. A little bit of refactoring and how to write a scenario outline.